Before I begin, I want to say something about this channel and about the format. In my previous video, I said that realistically, I cannot promise frequent, long, fully researched political podcasts every week. Life is life. I have work, responsibilities, family, and many other things that require my time and attention. So the format I can honestly commit to is one solid, thoroughly prepared episode a month. And I still mean that. But I also said that if something truly important happens, something that, in my opinion, cannot simply be ignored, I will record shorter commentaries between the main episodes. And this is exactly such a moment. This will not be a long podcast. It will not be a full historical documentary. It will be a short political commentary about one very specific issue: the current crisis in Polish-Ukrainian relations, the symbolism of the UPA, and the question of how far Polish patience and Polish generosity can be pushed. Because sometimes silence becomes neutrality. And sometimes neutrality becomes cowardice. There are moments when silence becomes cowardice, and this is one of those moments. I say this as someone who has supported Ukraine's right to defend itself from the very beginning of Russia's full-scale invasion. I say this as someone who understands, obviously, that Russia remains a threat not only to Ukraine, but to Poland, to Central Europe, and to the security architecture of the entire continent. So let me state this at the start, because I do not want this argument twisted. Russia is the aggressor. Ukraine is entitled to defend itself. Poland should not suddenly become pro-Russian, anti-Ukrainian, or strategically stupid. That is not my position. But support is not servitude. Alliance is not submission. And friendship between states does not mean that one country is expected to swallow every insult, every provocation, every distortion of history, simply because the other country is at war. What we are seeing now in Polish-Ukrainian relations is not just a diplomatic misunderstanding. It is a warning, a serious warning. Ukraine has decided to honor a military unit with a name referring to the Ukrainian Insurgent Army, the UPA. For many Ukrainians, especially within their own national mythology, the UPA is presented as an anti-Soviet independence movement. But for Poles, this name carries an entirely different weight. It is associated with the Volhynia massacres, with the murder of Polish civilians, with villages burned, families slaughtered, women and children killed, and with a wound that has never been properly healed. This is not some obscure academic dispute. This is not a minor footnote in a history book. This is one of the deepest historical traumas in Polish memory. And after everything Poland has done for Ukraine since 2022, this decision from Kyiv is not only offensive, it is politically reckless. Poland opened its border. Poland opened its homes. Poland became one of the main places of refuge for Ukrainians fleeing the war. Polish schools took in Ukrainian children. Polish hospitals treated Ukrainian patients. Polish families, churches, NGOs, local communities, and ordinary citizens helped on a massive scale. And beyond humanitarian help, Poland became a logistical backbone of Western support for Ukraine. Weapons, ammunition, equipment, supplies, so much of it moved through Poland. Polish infrastructure, Polish territory, Polish political capital, and Polish public goodwill became part of Ukraine's survival system. Poland provided military aid. Poland supported Ukraine diplomatically. Poland pushed the Ukrainian cause inside NATO, inside the European Union, and in relations with the United States. Poland was not a passive observer. Poland was not sitting comfortably on the sidelines waiting to see who wins. Poland became one of Ukraine's most important strategic partners. And yes, Poland also pays for crucial Starlink support used by Ukraine. This is not symbolic assistance. This is practical, expensive wartime infrastructure. So when a country that has received this scale of support decides to honor a formation that, in Polish memory, is linked with the mass killing of Poles, then Poland has every right to say no. Not quietly, not nervously, not in diplomatic whispers, but clearly, no. This is unacceptable. And I think President Karol Nawrocki was right to draw a line here. Whether you like his politics or not, whether you support him or not, this particular issue is larger than party politics. It is larger than one administration. It concerns Polish dignity, Polish historical memory, and the basic rules of relations between allies. Because let us be honest, if Poland had named a military unit after people responsible for massacres of Ukrainian civilians, Kyiv would not accept explanations about historical traditions. Ukraine would protest. Ukrainian society would be outraged. Ukrainian diplomats would demand correction, and they would be right to do so. So why is Poland expected to be quiet? Why are Poles always told to be mature, strategic, patient, responsible, careful, calm, while others are allowed to be emotional, symbolic, and historically aggressive? No. That double standard has to end. Supporting Ukraine against Russia does not require Poland to accept the glorification of people responsible for crimes against Poles. These two things are not the same. You can oppose Russia and still oppose Bandera worship. You can support Ukraine's sovereignty and still demand respect for Polish victims. You can understand Ukraine's struggle for survival and still say that historical falsification has consequences. In fact, a mature alliance requires honesty. A false alliance is built on silence. A real alliance is built on truth. And the truth is this: Poland and Ukraine have a shared enemy in Russia, but they do not automatically have identical interests in everything else. This is the part many people would rather not say aloud. Ukraine is not Poland's little brother. Poland is not Ukraine's servant. These are two states with their interests, their economies, their agriculture, their transport sectors, their ambitions, and their vision of the region. In some areas, our interests overlap. In some areas, they compete. That is normal in international politics. But what is not normal is pretending that gratitude is not relevant. What is not normal is accepting a situation where Poland carries enormous costs, takes political risks, absorbs social pressure, supports Ukraine's European ambitions, and then is told to shut up when Ukrainian historical policy crosses a Polish red line. That cannot work. Ukraine is keen to join the European Union. Fine. But EU membership is not an emotional award for suffering. It is not a medal given because a country has been attacked. It is a political, legal, and institutional process. It requires reforms. It requires rule of law. It requires serious anti-corruption work. It requires stable institutions. And it requires the ability to maintain responsible relations with your neighbors. And yes, Poland has a say in that process. So if Ukrainian leaders think Poland can be ignored, mocked, morally blackmailed, or treated as an automatic vote in every future European negotiation, they may be making a serious mistake. Poland is not required to support every Ukrainian demand unconditionally. Poland is not required to sacrifice its farmers, its transport sector, its historical memory, or its national dignity just because Russia is the greater threat. The fact that Russia is dangerous does not mean Ukraine gets a blank check. And I want to be clear here. This does not mean Poland should abandon Ukraine militarily. It does not mean we should help Russia. It does not mean we should celebrate Ukrainian setbacks. Anyone who thinks that is missing the point. A Russian victory would be bad for Poland. But a Ukrainian political culture that treats Polish support as guaranteed, while dismissing Polish sensitivities, is also bad for Poland. Both things can be true at the same time. This is where adult politics begins. We can support Ukraine against Russian aggression and still demand that Kyiv reverse this decision. We can help Ukraine defend itself and still say, do not honor the UPA in a way that insults Polish victims. We can keep strategic cooperation and still put conditions on political support. We can be allies without being silent. The Polish position should be simple. First, military and humanitarian support against Russia continues where it serves Polish security. Second, Poland expects Ukraine to stop glorifying symbols connected with anti-Polish massacres. Third, historical issues must be addressed honestly, including exhumations, memorials, access to archives, and clear public language about crimes committed against Polish civilians. Fourth, Ukrainian accession to the European Union cannot be treated as automatic. It must depend on reforms, rule of law, anti-corruption standards, and good neighborly relations. Fifth, Polish generosity must be respected. Not worshipped, not exaggerated, but respected. Because there is an old saying, no good deed goes unpunished. And many Poles are starting to feel exactly that. They feel that Poland did the right thing, morally, strategically, and humanly, and that now Poland is being treated as if its memory, its pain, and its interests are inconvenient details. That is dangerous. Not because Poles hate Ukrainians. Most do not. It is dangerous because public support is not infinite. Goodwill is not infinite. Patience is not infinite. When people feel disrespected, they change their minds. And once that happens, rebuilding trust becomes much harder. So the message to Kyiv should be firm but not hysterical. Ukraine, you are fighting a brutal war. We know that. We respect the courage of your soldiers and the suffering of your civilians. Russia is responsible for this war, and Russia remains the enemy. But do not confuse Polish support with Polish obedience. Do not expect Poland to defend your sovereignty while you insult Polish memory. Do not expect automatic support in Europe while you ignore the pain of Polish families whose relatives were murdered in Volhynia and eastern Galicia. Do not build your national identity on symbols that make reconciliation impossible. because Poland can be Ukraine's ally. Poland can be Ukraine's advocate. Poland can be Ukraine's logistical bridge to the West. But Poland will not be Ukraine's doormat. And if Ukrainian leaders want a future in Europe, they need to understand something elementary. Europe is not only about money, weapons, and reconstruction contracts. Europe is also about responsibility, about memory, about truth, about the ability to look your neighbor in the eye and say, yes, our history contains crimes, and we will not glorify those who committed them. That is the line, not anti-Ukrainian, not pro-Russian, pro-truth, pro-Polish, pro-reconciliation, but not reconciliation built on lies. Ukraine deserves support against Russia. Poland deserves respect from Ukraine. And if Kiev cannot understand that, then Polish politicians, regardless of party, must make it impossible to ignore. Because alliances survive difficult truths, they do not survive contempt.